After the British Grand Prix, Verstappen didn't just lose more points, he lost faith. A disastrous spin behind the safety car, an impossible gap to the McLarens, and now a 69-point hole in the championship. Oscar Piastri is running away with the title, and Verstappen, the most dominant driver in modern F1, has been forced into survival mode. Let's break it down. Silverstone was supposed to be the fight back. Verstappen delivered a phenomenal pole lap in qualifying in the dry, but then came the downpour. And in the race, the setup Red Bull chose completely backfired. Verstappen slid, struggled, and finally spun out at the restart. He barely held on to finish fifth. But while Max was wrestling with grip, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris delivered another McLaren 1-2. It wasn't even close. And behind the scenes, it's chaos. Yuki Tsunoda, driving the second Red Bull, finished dead last. Again, that's back-to-back last-place finishes for Tsunoda, who hasn't scored a single point since Imola. Red Bull no longer has a second driver, and their lead driver, he's had enough. Journalist Nelson Valkenburg summed it up best. Red Bull's in a tricky position. If Max goes, the team implodes. If he stays, and the car isn't competitive, the team explodes with Verstappen. It's a no-win scenario, and that's why Verstappen's future is suddenly in doubt. The key problem? Trust. According to Valkenburg, Verstappen no longer believes in Red Bull's technical team. They've built dominant machines in the past, yes, but this season, McLaren is faster. Ferrari and Mercedes are catching up, and Red Bull, they've stagnated. Can they prove to him that the car will be competitive over a season? Valkenburg asked. I don't believe so. This isn't just about race pace. It's about planning, leadership, direction. And Max Verstappen doesn't see a clear future with this team anymore. Now, here's where things get dangerous. Verstappen is locked into a long-term contract until 2028, but insiders know that contract isn't bulletproof. There's a get-out clause, and it could be triggered during this year's summer break. That's in a few weeks. If Verstappen walks, the consequences are unimaginable. Mercedes is watching everything. Toto Wolff has 2 seats and no contracts signed for 2026. George Russell is under pressure. Kimi Antonelli is talented but untested. And now, Wolff might be staring at the chance to sign a 4-time world champion in his prime, but that won't come cheap. There's a release fee, there's political fallout, and there's the loyalty factor. Verstappen and Red Bull have won everything together. This is the dynasty team. Why would he leave? According to Valkenburg, the answer is simple. My gut feeling says yes, that Verstappen will leave, but it won't be easy. Let's pause and think about that. This is the same Max Verstappen who said just 2 months ago, I'm happy at Red Bull, but in Formula One, nothing is forever. He knew what was coming, and he's not the only one getting nervous. Former Haas team boss Guenther Steiner added another layer to this drama. Steiner believes Verstappen could take the risk and walk away, despite the long-term deal. Why? Because Red Bull is no longer in control of the narrative. At the start of the season, they were untouchable. Now, they're desperate. And Max Verstappen? He doesn't play desperate. Let's talk about the damage. Red Bull isn't just slower, they're exposed. Their dominance is crumbling at every level. On track, they've lost pace. Off track, they've lost control. Adrian Newey left. Sergio Perez was replaced. Tsunoda is floundering, and Horner still surrounded by internal controversy and media tension. Now, throw in a potential Verstappen exit, and you've got a ticking time bomb. Even Verstappen's comments after Silverstone hint at frustration. He admitted his setup was wrong. He admitted the car wasn't suited to the rain. And for a moment, just a flash, he looked done. But here's what's really terrifying for Red Bull. Verstappen hasn't said a word about his contract. He's dodged questions. He's refused to commit. He knows the world is watching, and right now, he's holding all the cards. If he triggers the exit clause during the summer break, Red Bull can't stop him. All they can do is hope he still believes. But with each race, that belief is fading. And the fans? They're torn. Some want him to stay and rebuild. Others want to see him challenge himself elsewhere, maybe even lead Mercedes back to glory. The idea of Verstappen versus McLaren in a silver arrow? That's not fantasy anymore. It's a real possibility. The second half of this season is going to be wild. Verstappen is 69 points behind. Red Bull is scrambling to find solutions. And Mercedes? They're watching, waiting, plotting. It's now or never. If Red Bull can't turn this around before the summer break, the Verstappen era might be over. Not in 2028, not in 2026, but now. And when that moment comes, the F1 world won't be ready. Because this isn't just a transfer story, it's the possible collapse of the greatest team-driver partnership in recent F1 history. Red Bull are in panic mode, Verstappen is silent, and the countdown has already begun. And here's the part nobody at Red Bull wants to admit. Even if Verstappen stays, the damage might already be done. Trust isn't something you can patch up in a few races. Not when your car is slower, not when your lead engineer is walking out the door, and definitely not when your closest rivals, McLaren, have leapfrogged you mid-season. Andrea Stella's team didn't just beat Red Bull at Silverstone, they dismantled them. In dry, wet, mixed conditions, McLaren had more grip, better traction, and smarter strategy. And while Norris lifted the British flag on the podium, Verstappen was giving awkward interviews about trying to survive. For the four-time champion who once ruled this sport with an iron fist, survive is not in his vocabulary. And that's why this story isn't going away. Let's talk about the clause. Verstappen's contract, on paper, ties him to Red Bull until the end of 2028. But insiders know there's a critical escape hatch, a clause that allows Max to walk away if certain performance guarantees aren't met. Guess what? They aren't being met. Red Bull promised dominance. Instead, they've delivered mediocrity, and now that clause is ticking like a fuse. Summer break is when it could all ignite. But here's what makes this different from any other silly season rumor. This is personal. Verstappen isn't just a Red Bull driver. He's the symbol of their entire modern legacy. Every record, every win, every world title since 2021, all of it is stamped with his name. So if he walks, it's not just about replacing a driver. It's about rebuilding an identity from scratch. Now, zoom out for a second and look at the other teams. Ferrari, locked up with Hamilton and Leclerc. McLaren, committed to Norris and Piastri. Mercedes, wide open. Toto Wolff has been unusually quiet. No media fireworks, no sudden announcements, just silence. The last time he did that, he signed Lewis Hamilton. Let's be clear, Wolff isn't just chasing talent, he's hunting legacy. And landing Max Verstappen would be a power move the sport hasn't seen in years. It would flip the F1 grid, break Red Bull's spirit, and give Mercedes the ultimate weapon to challenge McLaren and Ferrari for the next decade. So what's stopping it? Not much. The only real hurdle now is timing. If Verstappen decides to trigger his exit clause before August, Mercedes will have to drop either George Russell or block Kimi Antonelli's rise. That's not easy. Both are homegrown stars. Russell has carried the team through difficult years. Antonelli is their next-generation hope, but neither of them is Max Verstappen. That's the reality Toto Wolff is now facing. And knowing Wolff, he'll do what's necessary, no matter how brutal. Meanwhile, at Red Bull, Christian Horner is under increasing pressure. Publicly, he's trying to act calm. Internally, it's chaos, staff departures, technical stagnation, driver confusion, and now, the very real prospect of losing the man who rebuilt Red Bull's legacy. This isn't just a tough season, it's an existential crisis. And Max Verstappen is holding the detonator. So, here's the final question we all need to ask. What does Max really want? Is it loyalty, legacy, or is it just winning? Because if it's the last one, and if Red Bull can't give him a championship-winning car, then nothing else matters. Not the contract, not the history, not even the exit fee. He'll walk. And when he does, Formula One will never be the same. If you want to know what Verstappen's next move is and how this saga ends, hit that like button. Subscribe for more breaking F1 stories and comment below. Will Verstappen really leave Red Bull? Or is this all just pressure for change? I'm reading every comment, so let me know your take. Until next time, the drama continues.